everyone, we're back. So we apologize for the technical delay. There's always some issue with technology. But today we are with Shane to talk about how to ace a job interview. So Shane, let us walk through our viewers about what we were just discussing a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so I was just pointing out that after being in executive search and placing executives in jobs for so many years, we have found that it's not always the best candidate gets selected. And oftentimes we can watch candidates who are maybe not technically as strong or as proficient, but are very extroverted personalities, or they really have a very high charisma, actually can do better in an interview, despite the fact that they're not actually the best candidate for the job. And I think the other piece that comes interesting into it is language, and what kind of use of language do you have? What kind of language do you speak? Mm-hmm. And one of the questions we had was, what do you think the most commonly spoken language in the world is?
Do we have to guess it, or I would say as in a language?
Yes.
When we're talking about job interviews, I would assume that it's not linguistic. It has to do with more of, where you place your hands, what you do with your shoulders. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is it right?
And yeah. Absolutely correct. And, body language is the most common language in the world. We all speak it every day. And I've actually seen candidates lose interviews because of the body language. And so your interview starts as soon as the person looks at you. So, what are you wearing? A lot of times you'll see people, they don't button the top button of their shirt up, or they have the sunglasses on their head, or their hair is not, they haven't done their hair, or they need a haircut, or their fingernails are too long, or they're ungroomed, or this is all part of your body language. And then of course comes the handshake. And what does it mean when the way somebody shakes your hand? You have the palm. Your palm is, some people will tell your fortune from your palm. So when you're in court of law, you have to show your palm to the judge, and you put your other palm usually on a particular book, and you say you make your pledge that you're telling the truth. When you surrender. Hopefully you never surrender. You're in a war to the police or whatever it is, but people put up their palms and they say, hey, I give up. If someone's trying to tell the truth, they usually show their palms. So when you're shaking someone's hand and the palm doesn't touch palm to palm, you can understand that person's hiding something from you. This is also important for the candidates, because if you're meeting somebody, and I don't know how much you really want me to go into the body language, how you shake your hand, but I can actually tell quite a bit about somebody by the way you shake my hand. And I think there's also been on the line, they also analyzed the favorite handshake to analyze is Donald Trump's handshake, of course. And, are they grabbing you by the elbow and so on. But in the very least, because we're limited in time, I don't want to go into a session on body language. But in the very least, you need to have a firm handshake, and you need to look a person in the eyes while you shake their hand. And I've actually seen C-level people lose jobs because they don't have a firm handshake. It sounds crazy, but it actually can be quite a turnoff for people who have very limp handshakes, especially if your audience is of the old school, the older baby boomers. Maybe they might put more emphasis on it, depending on what your audience is like. The second piece is, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask, is it as important as having a candidate that's fully perfect? If he answered all of the right questions and you want, and he has all of the skill sets that you need for the job, is body language that important in an interview? Is it 50-50? I'm just wondering.
Generally, I wouldn't say that you could totally blow it if you were, amazing in all other areas. But generally, the body language will be indicative of other areas. So if the person has a very limp handshake, they might be low in energy, or they might be low in ambition or drive. If they're not touching palms, they could be holding something back, or they're not completely forthright. And it also is, I also have seen people slump. So, they have, even in animals, marine biologists have said, when you look at lobsters, for example, they can actually tell you which lobster is the leader of the pack by its body language. So when you go in and you're hunching over, you're telling people different things about yourself, whether you want to acknowledge that or not. And an advanced interviewer will pick up all your body, will try to pick up as much data from the interaction with you as possible. So it's always good to pre-script, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about in the session, is to pre-prepare your answers. So you're not thinking about what you're saying, but you're focused on how you're saying it, and you're picking up the body language of your interviewer. And so there's a couple quick things I just want to touch on. When you're looking at your interviewer, be cognizant that if the person leans back in the chair, they could just be relaxing. It's not 100% any of this, but it could tip you off that it's less interesting what they're saying than if they have both their elbows on the table. If they have both their elbows on the table and they start touching their ear, I will train my consultants to say, you need to go for the close. They like what you're saying, they're interested, and they really feel that what you're saying is truthful. If they start touching their nose, and you can try this with your friends, when you're talking and they just start touching their nose, they generally feel like you're not telling the truth. And if somebody is talking to you and they start touching their nose or covering their mouth and touching their nose like this, it's also a good flag that they could potentially not be telling you the truth. They could also have an itchy nose at that point. So it's not 100%, but just pick up on it. So how do you use this in your interview? So if I'm interviewing with you and all of a sudden you say, I say, by the way, my search firm has 15% market share. And you say, oh, that's interesting, Shane. You touch your nose. Well, then I would say, oh, I might just want to put a bit more information in that. Say, oh, by the way, here's our, audited financial statements. And by the way, these are the number of searches we do. And here's 6 of our clients. If you want to talk to some of our client referrals to just get a feeling for the breadth and expansive work that we do, because maybe you weren't aware of that. And you say, oh, actually, I didn't know you had these clients. So that's how you use it. Don't, put your hand up and say, oh, you think I'm a liar. That's probably not how you want to do it. You just want to gently add more details into it.
Back it up as much content or as much to support basically what you're saying.
Yes. So it's a two-way street. The interviewer is going to be picking up your body language. You want to be picking up their body language. The number one, what I would tell you is that, because if you're interviewing for a job and the person's a liar, you want to know that as a candidate. Yeah. And after this, I'm not going to keep talking about body language. It's a fascinating topic, so you can just keep talking about it. But a professional liar will be very good at the facial, trying to hide the facial cues that I'm a liar. But they will not be cognizant of their feet. And so a good thing to do is look at the person's feet. And sometimes when you go into some people's things, they'll have a glass table. And that's generally because the interviewer wants to see your feet. And so are they crossing their feet? Are they hooking their feet behind the chair? You have 3 things in body language, which is the freeze, the flight, and the fight. So when they freeze, if I ask you a question that's like, if I say, for example, does your company have any sexual assault charges against it? And the person stopped and the person's wagging their foot. You have foot waggers? Yeah. Okay, I love foot waggers because they're easy to catch. So a foot wagger, all of a sudden the foot stops wagging. That's called the freeze. Now, I know that there's probably some kind of lawsuit going on that you don't want me to know about, because otherwise you'd just be wagging, be like, well, lawsuit, what are you talking about? That's not true. But you just exhibited the freeze. The flight would mean the foot stops and it turns towards the door. You have a slight, the direction your foot is putting. And then the fight is the foot stops wagging and then they attack you. How could you say something like that to me? That's an act of aggression. So these are the 3 ways that you would react. Now, sets up a flag. So we just leave it there, but that's a very, very exciting topic to look at. The other thing is, if you're a woman, a lot of women are going to get upset when I say this. I'm not a sexist. I'm just trying to help you. I want you to get the job. Go to the hair salon. get your hair done, get your nails done, put a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, a little touch of makeup
I
on.
agree. It's about the presentation at the end of the day, just as equally as it is for the guy to be groomed. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that this morning that I'm gonna get a little slack for that comment, but it's like, yeah, I shaved this morning. It's not,
Yeah.
a lot of guys don't like shaving our face every day. In the Middle East, not a lot of guys don't shave the face every day, but you should be well groomed. So you want to look like a boss. You want to really come in there and really own the whole piece. So just remember those core pieces. Don't split your legs. And the other thing is, for Westerners who are listening to this, keep your feet on the ground, because a lot of people in England think it's very wanky to cross your legs during an interview. And of course, if you're sitting, especially with an old school Saudi businessman, for example, and you show the sole of your foot to him, he will be offended. So keep your feet on the ground. And let's just move on then. I could just talk about body language for so long, and it's so cool because really it also goes into sorry.
I'm just saying,
you do handwriting analysis. You do handwriting analysis. It's tied to your body language, and these two areas are just so fascinating. But let me just move on, because I'll just have to keep going on to what you guys want to know, which is, how do you answer a question?
Right.
That's what I think is interesting. And what's really fascinating is the form of an answer is actually more powerful than the content of an answer. So, for example, if you go and you want to talk to an imam, you need to talk to an imam in a certain way. If you want to talk to a judge in court, you need to have a certain form to your dialogue. Hi, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. You have a certain way of talking. And so when your form is off, and you look at, for example, President Trump, a lot of the things that he says may be the right thing to do, but the form and the way in which he says it upsets everybody, because his form is off and he becomes ineffective in his leadership. And so it's the same with you, is that having good form in your interview will take a C candidate into an A candidate. So let me just show you the top form, which is the easiest one, which is what we call the star or car method of answering a question. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. If I could get slide 10. Have you heard of this before? Tala, the star or car method?
No, actually, I haven't.
So it stands for situation, task, action, result, or circumstance, action, result. And this is like, I don't know who invented it. Now you remember it, right?
Yeah.
So the line on the bottom is the best, is a good one to look at. It shouldn't be more than 1.5 minutes. And now you want to understand that you are presenting, you are telling a story. So when I ask you, tell me about yourself, you want to have some punch there, something that grips me into the answer. And this is where a lot of really top candidates, they sometimes drop the ball because they're so programmed not to talk about negative things. And one of the core things when you look at a newspaper or you look at a movie or you look at anything, it always starts with a negative. Like Marvel Comics, it starts with a big explosion and some villain is going to take over the world, and there's a bomb and there's a killer and there's a da-da-da. That's how because that grips you into the story. So who's your killer? Who's your villain? And you want to present that at the beginning of your answer. We have generally what we're looking at as executives, our villains are constraints. So we're either constrained by time, obviously, because we all die, and that it's considered to be a considerably negative constraint. So time. You have a constraint of money. I think in the COVID experience, we've all felt the constraint of money. You have the constraint of human capital. Hey, I want to do this great marketing campaign, but I need 10 digital marketing guys, and I need a video guy, and I need this. So you have a human capital constraint. Hey, we're not going to make our marketing budget bigger than our sales team, or, some CEOs, they think like that, by the way. So you have a human capital constraint. You have a cultural constraint. Culture constraint is, hey, I'm running the I'm working for an American firm and I'm running the New York office. I'm in Riyadh. Like imagine if you're the head of managing director for JP Morgan in Riyadh and you're reporting into New Yorkers. In New York, if you haven't paid your invoice after 30 days, they'll send you a legal letter. In Saudi, if you even mention the contract to a Saudi businessman, he's going to throw you out the window. So it's a total, there's totally different ways of running the business. So you have culture problems, you have political issues, so whatever your constraint is, that is the first part of your answer. So if someone says to you, give me an example of a time you were able to dramatically increase sales, you would say, yeah, I would love to do that. Back in 2008, I was tasked with launching the new product, Blue Widgets. And you won't believe this. It was a crisis. They cut my budget by 50%. They let go 50% of my sales team. And then they said, look, we want you to launch in Saudi Arabia this new product. By the way, I need it done in 6 months. And it normally takes 12 months to launch a product. Now, all of a sudden, I'm just making this answer up, but you're actually, oh, well, what did he do? How do you deal with that? It starts to become interesting because now I've labeled the constraints. So that's the first part. And you do it in 2 sentences. The second part of your answer is called the action part. And action has 2 pieces. One is strategic development, and the other part is strategic implementation. So when I'm taking an action, I want to understand, like, what should I do? And then how do I do it? And a big part of where people drop, here's a really good area to get a competitive advantage in your interview. I'm going to give it to you right now. And a lot of people miss this. And the smarter you are, and the more successful you are, the more of a chance you have of missing this opportunity right here. And it goes back again because people don't like to be negative. Mm-hmm. And what makes you seem smart? What is the true mark of an intellectual of our time or of antiquity is the degree to which they disagree with their contemporaries. So when you say who's one of the smartest people of all time, you'll say Socrates. It's a fair. You can say whatever you want, but if I say I think Socrates is the smartest, you can't really argue with me too much. A little bit, but not too much. Why? Because Socrates was put to death because he disagreed with everybody and everything of his time. And that's why he seems so smart, because he was against everything. Now, so part of when you're in and this is proven in psychological. Now, fine, that could be true. Or I say, look, the boss wanted me to open in Canada. He had cut my team by 50%. And I was originally hired by the other group CEO who just retired. And this is a new CEO. We didn't have a great relationship. So there's a bit of political friction. And then he tells me he wants me to open in Canada. And it was like, wow, how are we going to do this? They already have, we were Walmart. We were opening Walmart in Canada. And they already have 3-4 discount stores like Kmart that are running in Canada. So I knew that if I open in Toronto and the main cities, I'm going to get bled out by a price war. So we went into little cottage towns like St. Catharines and Sault Ste. Marie and smaller cities like Ottawa and Montreal first, where we started to get to where, so we had our revenue stream first, because going straight in to the major cities would have caused a price war and we would have bled out and we would have lost that war. It wouldn't have worked. Mm-hmm. So you see right away how I start to give you of what wouldn't work, lets you know that I really know my business well. So in your strategic development, make sure you don't just jump. And this is your competitive advantage I was talking about. It's right here. Is don't just jump to the strategy that does work. Highlight 1 or 2 strategies that won't work first. Mm-hmm. And then tell them what you did do that works. And that's in the strategic development. That's in the action part of your answer. And then what are the other traits that we want? Because all of your dialogue, there's always this subliminal dialogue that's going on. So the other thing that you want to put in your answer is, I'm a team player, I'm collaborative, and I can get all parts of the business to collaborate and work together with me. So the other part of your action is implementation. So you then can throw in, hey, by the way, I went down to manufacturing and told them, hey, this is our plan. We're going to open in these small towns. Do you have any ideas of products or something that would work for these smaller towns? And then I talked to the marketing team and I got them on board that, hey, we're not going in the big cities. Then I talk with sales and then I talk with logistics. And how do you get that implementation? How do you get ownership for your idea? And then the final piece, so that's what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who are we going to do it with? That's your action piece. And then your result is, when you look at a top performer, they're always benchmarking themselves. So so if you're with someone who's really competitive, you know, they'll be walking a little bit ahead of you. If you go to the gym, they're going to go on the treadmill. They're going to go half a kilometer faster than you. They're going to do 3 more floors on the Stairmaster than you. They're always checking. Yeah. So that's what we want to see in the answer. Are you benchmarking yourself? So you could say, by the way, we opened Walmart in Canada. We opened 9 stores in 12 months. At that same period, we opened in 6 other countries. We were the most profitable greenfield operation in Walmart. And we were also ranked in Retail Magazine, the #1 greenfield startup of the year internationally. So now I want to rank internally, regionally, and globally. And the second I see that benchmarking, then I start to say, okay, this person is competitive. This person has a champion mindset. And then the other piece with your result is you place your result in numbers. You put your result in time as well. So you notice how I kept saying in 12 months or 24 months. Someone who's less competitive, they won't benchmark, and they won't say the time frame. They'll say, oh yeah, we opened the new office and it was great. Yeah. Well, they're not going to tell you because they don't care. If it takes 12 months or 24 months, they're more relationship-based, organic people. They don't really care about hard deadlines as much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have a question to ask you. So in an interview, there are actually two parts to this question. So what's the most common interview question that any person would ask going into an interview?
What's the most common question anybody would ask? The most common question in the world, the most common interview question in the world is, tell me about yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not that's a good interview question or not. Pardon?
How can you respond to that in order for you to stand out? Because it's a very common question.
It's a very common question. And the other thing that we should also note is that if somebody is a fraud or a con man, they will actually perform better on this question than somebody who is a proper professional. So if you bring a real expert on board, they will actually perform poorly on this question because they won't be prepared for it and they won't know how much information or how little information to give you. Now, a con man will do better on this question. Why? Because a con man will know that this is the most common question in the world. They will know that the interview is going to start on this question and they're going to prepare it day and night. So if you prepare on this question, you can use it to your advantage because you know it's going to happen. So that's another side thing that, you know, personally, I don't like the question, but the question is very relevant for the job seeker because you will get it. So how do we answer this question? It's a very easy thing to do. And what I would say is the first thing you do is say, what are the top 5 skills that you need in the job that you're interviewing for? So say, for example, I'm going for a general manager job. And the general manager position, I need to have profit and loss management experience. I need management experience, profit and loss, sales, marketing, and leadership. So I know those are the 5 core things that I'm going to look at. Then I want to talk about, maybe if I could get slide 16, that would be great. I want to look at what are the top 5 traits, where did I pick them up, and what were the brands that I picked them up with, and what was the result? So for example, I might say, hey, yeah, I'd love to tell you about myself. I went to Wharton Business School where I ranked in the top 5% of my class. And Wharton really helped me develop my analytical skills. Then I got my first job in Procter & Gamble, where I was assigned to this as a sales account executive, and I really developed my sales skills. I was ranked as the top 1 sales executive in North America and second in the world. Then I went on and I moved to category management, where I really learned how to drive profitability at shelf. And I started learning how to lead a team, where I was leading a team of 10 people. And so I see how I'm there. I'm mentioning the brand Wharton P&G. I'm mentioning the actual piece. Sad, are you still there? I don't know if we can get slide 16, because I'm getting some feedback from some of my team that there was a freeze on the site. I don't know if that's happening, but it's all good. Can I get slide 16, please? So when you look at this slide, it's basically, where did I pick up the core capabilities that are going to allow me to excel in the job, and what is the result that I got in that area? So, for example, if I'm going for a marketing role, I could say, well, I really learned brand strategy while I was working at Kraft, and I worked there for 3 years, and I was a brand manager for Mondelez cheese, I don't know, whatever their brand is. And my result was, I had the highest customer activation in North America, and I ranked number 2. And then I really learned digital strategy while I was working for Kareem as the deputy head of marketing globally for them, where it was pure digital play, and we did it. And so that's how you answer that question.
So it's a little bit of integrating the skills that are required for the job within your answer as well, so that you can kind of bring yourself out in a way that's more presentable, more relatable for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to say, okay, what are the top 5 things that I need for this job? And then what are my what are the top 5 skills? Where did I learn those skills? And what was my result while I was utilizing those skills? So if it's profit and loss, say, hey, when I was working for AT&T in Europe, I was in charge of the P&L, and I was able to increase EBITDA by 46% over 12 months, making our office one of the most profitable in the region. So again, it's keeping it short to the brand, the skill, and the result. Brand, skill, result. Brand, skill, result. Brand, skill, result. And you do that 5 times, and you get that all done in 2.5 minutes. And then you turn back to the interviewers at the end of that and say, and now if I've done my research, say, for example, I know that for you as a bank, you want to open in Saudi Arabia. So, I know that you have on your agenda, you want to expand your branch. So I could say, look, these were my 5 skills, and that's a little bit about me. And if you want, I can tell you more about how I do business development in Saudi Arabia if you'd like. Now that's called sculpting. So at the end of the question, at the end of the answer, I leave it with a question if you want me to give you more information about that. Rather than what the other people do is they have a long tangent and they start talking about stuff that's not relevant for the job. And military guys do this all the time. They'll be like, one of the military guys will be saying, well, Shane, and then I was stationed out in Kandahar, and, and one evening we were out with the Jeep and I got stuck. This is literally, and the guy's telling me how he got stuck in his Jeep, and he blows 5 minutes of his interview. It's totally not relevant. It's not relevant.
And it becomes more engaging as well when it's more of a conversation. If the person wants to know something specific, then he would ask something specific, and you could tailor make that answer to what he is requiring.
Absolutely. And the other thing is we want to understand is, do you have a championship mindset? Do you have the executive mindset? And when you're dealing with someone who has a championship mindset, they're very focused, because in the Middle East, especially, there's so much opportunity. One of the core things is being able to focus on the things that matter. And so when you're dealing with someone with a championship mindset, and they say something like, oh, yeah, I used to work at Kraft, and you're like, oh, I love Mondelez. My mom used to always put that in my lunchbox. And he'll be like, yeah, well, I think lunch is important too. And when I'm doing business, I always want to know where my lunch is. And that's how I manage my P&L. And so he'll make a joke and he'll bring the conversation right back to the agenda, which is, let me demonstrate for you the capabilities I have for this job, and I'm going to close you in the next 60 minutes. And an underperformer will be like, oh yeah, I used to have the Garfield lunchbox, and they blow 50 minutes talking about lunch at elementary school.
True.
So that is how you would answer that question. There's actually, like, if you go to our YouTube channel or our website, ownmycareer.com, we have a lot more information about these questions that you, and if they connect with me on LinkedIn, I actually give, we have 50 career tips that are coming out for free to help people, because it's such a science. There's so much information to say about how to do it. I don't know if there's enough time to put all of these in.
We have many questions that I want to ask you, actually, but I just want to remind our viewers who just tuned in. Today is actually the 4th episode of the career management segment that we have, led by Shane Phillips. So Shane Phillips is the career coach, and he is basically the CEO of the management consultancy, the Phillips Group. And today we're talking about how to ace a job interview. I have another question for you that I hear all the time, and I'm sure people resent this question. So they always say, how can you answer a question like, what's your biggest weakness? Or where do you see yourself in 10 years? Because I'm pretty sure everyone asks this question.
Everybody asks this question. And the other thing is, when you're answering this question, the first thing is that you have to look at is how senior and how competent. And when I mean competent, I don't mean overall competent as a person, but when I mean competent is how competent of an assessor are they? Are they a trained professional assessor who has a lot of experience? Or are you dealing with someone who maybe, they're just getting a feel for how to interview? And so they're saying, tell me about your greatest weakness. They don't really, do they understand the psychology behind it, which is a senior person, or do they are they just taking it at face value? So when you ask this question as a senior assessor, we don't really care what your weakness is. Though what we're really testing for is do you have a realistic self-image? And how realistic are you, and how candid are you and how critical are you of yourself, and how in tune are you with yourself, and from there we would deduce how in tune you are with your team, how in tune you are with your brand, how in tune you are with your company, how in tune you are with your customer, how in tune you are with the market. So somebody who says, oh, I don't really have any weakness, for me, they're immediately disqualified. And for a lot of my clients, they immediately disqualify as well, because that means that person will be very difficult to manage, because when they come to the table, they won't be able to see their part in it. Versus someone else who's very realistic, they'll be like, boss, I got to tell you this. I think, I was overbearing again. I was a little bit too assertive, and I kind of pushed this person in a corner, and they pushed back, and this situation happened. Part of it's my fault. I have to take, that kind of person is very easy to deal with.
He's held accountable. He holds accountability for whatever he's doing. So he's probably a person you would rely on, maybe.
You would rely on, you would be able to work, you could coach them, you could develop them. So there's also the other piece of your development is learning. And at the crux of learning is humility. So I can't learn unless I go, hey, Tala, how was I in my presentation? If I'm humble enough to ask you to give me advice on how to be better, I can learn. But if I have an ego and I'm like, oh, blah, 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 I'll never learn anything. So this is all wrapped up in this question. This question is a quagmire. It's a very simple question. It can be very complex in how you deal with it and how you analyze it. So again, going back to who's your audience and who you're dealing with. So be wary that if you're a candidate and you can't talk about your weaknesses, you will most likely, if it's a C-level job, you'll most likely be disqualified. So the other question is now, how truthful do I be? And the thing is, You also don't want to disqualify yourself if you have some fatal flaw. And I